Welcome to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff, presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we have a lot to unpack here as we preview Week 4 in the FCS. It's never a dull moment in the FCS. Each week provides some great storylines, and here is a look at what we have on tap for this episode. Florida A&M's legendary coach Jake Gaither's legacy is still impacting football today. We're going to take a look at that. Also, our fifth down NFL draft prospects you want to keep an eye on, and X's and O breakdown of Princeton and Sacred Heart's defense and why they are so successful. But first, it's time to go into our 4-minute offense as we take a look at some of the top headlines heading into Week 4. The Bison slayed yet another FBS Dragon last week as they upset the 13th-ranked Iowa Hawkeyes. In that game, you saw NDSU beat Iowa at their own game by dominating the line of scrimmage and running down the throats of the Big Ten Hawkeyes' defense. Now, an impressive outing yet again, and I have joked on Twitter that the Big 12 needs to add Fargo's finest. As with every win, you can't really call it an upset anymore. Now, the Bison return to action on October 1st for homecoming as they host Illinois State. Albany is off to an impressive 3-0 start to the season. This is surprising to us, but not probably to the team and the coaching staff, as they expect to win each and every game. But this was a team that had some questions coming into the season on both sides of the ball. All they've done is knock off FBS Buffalo and a very good Holy Cross team in impressive fashion. This week they have another big-time test as they play host to St. Francis. The Hoyas of Georgetown are another club that's off to a 2-0 start to the season. Head coach Rob Scarlata and his troops have gotten great play from their defense, which looks to be strong again this season, and a newfound passing attack led by quarterback Tim Barnes. It's been a steady building process on the hill for Coach Scarlata, who is doing his part to make football as important to the school's athletic footprint as the basketball program. Now, they have another strong test this week versus a Columbia squad that's also building their program in the right direction. Keeping with the theme of surprising undefeated starts, the East Tennessee State Bucks, who are in their second year of existence since restarting their once proud football program, knocked off the Western Carolina Catamounts in front of 13,863 screaming fans at Bristol Motor Speedway, 34-31. Bucks head coach Carl Torbush has done a remarkable job in turning this thing around in just 2 seasons, and he'll be the first to tell you that they still have a long ways to go, but it's still nice for the Bucks to get used to winning. We'll see if they can make this 3 in a row as they travel to Spartanburg, South Carolina to face the Wofford Terriers. Let's hand out some awards for last week's efforts. Offensive Player of the Week quarterback Brandon Duncan of Arkansas Pine Bluff, the 6'3", 215-pound sophomore, threw for 505 yards and 4 touchdowns, including the game winner in a 3-overtime thriller in an upset versus Alcorn State. It was a great victory for the Golden Lions, who overcame a 30-14 deficit to force overtime and get their first victory of the season. Defensive Player of the Week goes to junior defensive back Terrell Bonds of Tennessee State, who had 2 tackles, 2 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions in a 31-24 victory over Bethune-Cookman. And finally, the Special Teams Player of the Week award goes to North Dakota State's kicker Cam Peterson, who nailed a 37-yard field goal as time expired to help NDSU pull off the upset victory over the Iowa Hawkeyes, giving the Bison their first victory over a ranked FBS opponent. We'll take a quick break and be back with more of the FCS Kickoff.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at gocsb.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Fresh off a week where the #1 team of the FCS, North Dakota State Bison, knocked off the Big Ten's 13th-ranked Iowa Hawkeyes, it begs the question of who should be on upset alert this week. Well, we'll take a look at 4 games on the schedule that definitely fit the bill.
Arkansas State should be on upset alert as they face off against the Bears of Central Arkansas. The Red Wolves have been one of the more consistent teams in the Sun Belt Conference over the last 3 seasons with their explosive offense. That hasn't been the case at this early juncture of the season. What we have seen is an offense that can't get out of its own way and a defense that has given up over 280 yards rushing per game. Central Arkansas is a team that has a ton of size in the trenches on both sides of the ball and have been one of the more well-balanced offenses in the FCS. Their defensive line is active and their back 7 does a great job in flying to the football. Now, the Red Wolves may turn it on in conference play, but I don't think they walk away with the W after this one. I like Central Arkansas. The running Bulldogs of Gardner-Webb and the Ohio Bobcats are an interesting matchup, and we know Gardner-Webb will run the football. We know the Bobcats will run the football. That alone will make this a close game. The intriguing part is that Gardner-Webb has 3 legit NFL prospects in tight end Mike Estes and both outside linebackers in Chad Jeter and Aaron Cook. The latter have an opportunity to keep Bobcats quarterback Greg Windham contained in a pocket and make him make plays consistently through the air. I think the difference in this one, as is with most Frank Solich teams, is that the Bobcats have shown the ability to not beat themselves both fundamentally or with mental mistakes. Look for Ohio to get a scare, but not lose this one. Kennesaw State travels to Pittsburgh to take on Duquesne. It's homecoming for the Dukes, and they have a tough task of facing a spread option attack, which we know is the most hated offense to go up against. The Dukes' run defense has taken a beating so far this season, but to their credit, they've made more than enough plays to post a 2-1 record. For the Owls, this is another chance to match up against a playoff caliber team to see where you are as a program. And I know quarterback Chandler Burks has performed well since stepping in as a starter, and he'll have some success versus the Dukes, but it won't be enough to pull off the upset. Look for Duquesne to escape with the win. And finally, Western Illinois travels to DeKalb to face Northern Illinois, and new Leatherneck head coach Charlie Fisher has done an outstanding job so far with this football team. WIU has done well inside the red zone, running the football and also protecting the football, and we can't say those things about Northern Illinois. Now, the Huskies are off to a rough 0-3 start to the season. Their defense hasn't looked like the South defenses we've seen from them over the last 4 years. Their biggest task will be slowing down Steve McShane in that Leatherneck's ground attack that averages 220 yards a game on the ground. For a defense that has had troubles getting off the field, partly due to an offense that has had trouble staying on it, I can't see them winning this one. I like Western Illinois in an upset.
Are you ready? The Connecticut School of Broadcasting can help you reach the next level in the amazing world of broadcast and entertainment media.
I've mentored several interns here at the Covino and Rich Show at SiriusXM, and the ones from CSB always stand out to me. They have a knowledge of the equipment, knowledge of editing, what it's like to be in a studio, and that always eliminates a huge learning curve.
Their professional studios give students a hands-on, learn-by-doing approach using equipment used in actual radio stations and TV studios. Visit our website at gocsb.com or call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Start today.
Welcome back to the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and there are a ton of good matchups this week in the FCS, and we'll start previewing some games, starting with some of the big games in the northeast part of the country, and we'll start at the top of this country at Arano, Maine, as the Black Bears play host to James Madison.
Two things that we know travel well, run game and defense, and the Dukes consistently bring both wherever they play. Versus Maine, they're going to have to rely on that offensive line, as the Black Bears, despite their numbers, are pretty solid up front, led by pro prospect Patrick Ricard. Now, the Black Bears have to be able to create some level of offensive balance if they want to get their first victory of the season. That's the one element I thought coming into this season that they'll be able to count on. And Maine's defense will keep it close, but I see the Dukes' defense with linebacker Gage Steele and Dimitri Holloway creating all types of problems for that Black Bear offense. I like James Madison. Dartmouth travels to take on Holy Cross, and it's homecoming for the Crusaders. The Big Green come in off of a thrilling comeback victory over New Hampshire, and if we're being completely honest, the Big Green was in complete control of that game, but 3 turnovers is what nearly doomed them. I was very impressed with the balance they showed on offense, and quarterback Jake Hennigan played very well, but he has to do a better job of protecting the football. Holy Cross is on a 2-game losing streak, and you can't question their offense, which leads the nation with 30 first downs per game. The Crusaders march up and down the field and are able to put touchdowns on the board behind senior quarterback Peter Pujols, who already has over 1,000 yards passing and 9 touchdowns. The defense is the big concern in this one for me. Holy Cross is giving up nearly 250 yards a game on the ground. I think this bodes well for the Big Green and running back Ryder Stone. I like Dartmouth. I really like this matchup between St. Francis and Albany. This is a strength versus strength battle, as the Red Flash, led by sensational running back Marcus Bagley, who's coming off a 220-yard effort over Columbia, can run the football extremely well, and the Great Danes of Albany, who can also run the ball, do a great job of stopping it as well. Where this game will be won is on a perimeter. A lot of Albany's big plays in the passing game come off of play action, so if you're St. Francis, it's about keeping your eyes on your luggage and winning those one-on-one battles. The Great Danes have an opportunistic defense that does a great job of taking the ball away, but I think the Red Flash have the edge in the secondary and in the special teams department. Look for St. Francis to win on first down defensively, get Albany out of their tendencies early, and win a close one. VMI marches up to Lewisburg, Pennsylvania to take on the Bucknell Bison, and this will be the 3rd consecutive road game for the Keydets, and they bring their passing game wherever they go. Quarterback Al Cobb with wide receivers Dane Forlines and Aaron Sanders form a potent trio in the passing game. Their offensive line will be tested in this one, as Bucknell's defensive front, led by defensive tackle Abdullah Anderson, is strong, versatile, and does a great job of resetting the line of scrimmage. The Bison offense is based on the philosophy of being strong up front and running the football. The issue this season has been their inability to get consistency from their passing game. In this situation that could make things a little bit closer than what head coach Joe Susan would like at home, look for the Bison to control the line of scrimmage and slow down VMI's passing game. Bucknell, in my opinion, matches up very well in the secondary. I think they eke out a victory. In what should be an offensive explosion, the Penn Quakers travel up to the Bronx to take on the Fordham Rams, and Penn is coming off a loss to Lehigh, and the Rams are fresh off of a bye week. The Quakers have everything that you need to be successful on offense: great quarterback, explosive running back, and a playmaker at wide receiver. What they also need is defensive stops, which is what they didn't get last week versus Lehigh. In this ball game, it'll come down to a few matchups. How can Penn's defense matchup versus tight end Faison Odom, and how can they minimize running back Chase Edmonds' effectiveness? Now, for the Rams in this ball game, I look at their defense and zero in on the biggest matchup they will have to win in this ball game: cornerback Jahad Pretlow versus wide receiver Justin Watson. Watson is one of the best receivers in the FCS and is Penn's #1 option, while Pretlow is an NFL prospect that has to win that battle more often than not. You'll be treated to 2 outstanding quarterbacks in this one, with Penn's Alex Torgerson and Fordham's Kevin Anderson, but trench warfare will win out, and I like what Fordham brings to the table in this matchup. Keep an eye on linebacker George Dawson. You'll hear his name called a lot on Saturday. Staying in the New York City area and heading out to Long Island, Sacred Heart and Stony Brook battle under the lights at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. The Pioneers are off to a 3-0 start, and they've done it the Sacred Heart way, punishing opponents on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Senior quarterback R.J. Noel plays a good brand of football that's efficient and doesn't put the ball in harm's way. The Pioneer defense, playing without their best defender and linebacker James Rentz, are still holding opponents to 14 points a game. The Stony Brook Seawolves are built in the same fashion as the Pioneers and are coming off a huge upset victory over the Richmond Spiders, in which their defense straight up dismantled the high-powered Spiders' offensive attack, forcing 3 turnovers. Now, offensively, they can run the heck out of the football with Stacey Bedell and company. Their biggest concern will be their passing game. Can Joe Carbone do his best R.J. Noel impression and keep the offense on pace, hitting throws necessary to win? I think that's a tough task. Look for a low-scoring game with the visiting Pioneers coming away victorious.
I think that the main reason to choose HBCU is for the family atmosphere. The guys are going to get the core values that their parents taught them, that their family members tried to raise them. You'll have a close-knit atmosphere. You'll actually have guys that care about you as a person. So I think that's the main reason for choosing the HBCU.
Even though he hasn't coached there in 47 years, the late great coaching legend Jake Gaither's imprint is still all over the Florida A&M program. And we'll take a look at how the coach who wanted his players to be agile, mobile, and hostile in this week's episode of Tradition.
Jake Gaither coached at Florida A&M from 1945 to 1963, compiling a 204 36-4 record, never having a losing season, and also never finishing with less than 6 wins on the season. His 1959 team went undefeated, as well as his 1961 team, which may have been his best yet, which featured future Hall of Famer Bullet Bob Hayes. That team finished 10-0, scoring 506 points while only giving up 33 points on the year, pitching 6 defensive shutouts. The famous quote of his, agile, mobile, and hostile, is still being practiced and preached today by current head coach Alex Wood and also previous head coach and former Rattler Earl Holmes. Both men will tell you that Coach Gaither's impact on FAMU athletics is still felt throughout this program. Gaither also left his legacy on the whiteboard as well with the creation of the split line T offense, which was soon adopted by many colleges across the country. Jake Gaither, coaching, football, humanitarian, and FAMU legend.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show, to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at gocsb.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Let's preview some more games, shall we? Let's look at the Mid-Atlantic region, and we'll start with a big one in Lynchburg, Virginia, as the Liberty Flames take on the Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
I don't think the Flames are a bad football team, quite honestly. What has hurt them so far this year is self-inflicted wounds which lead to poor starts. It happened against Virginia Tech, and it happened versus SMU. Both were winnable games. Facing Jacksonville State, I look at nose guard Jerron Green being the biggest X factor for Liberty. If you want to stop the spread attack, the pressure has to come from within, and if Green can have a big day up front, it goes a long way in helping the Flames pull off the upset. Jacksonville State is coming off a big victory versus Coastal Carolina, and the Gamecocks can beat you in multiple ways, and I was more surprised by their defensive effort last week and throughout the year for that matter. Darius Jackson is proving himself to be a big-time playmaker with the team leading 5.5 TFLs on the season. This is one of those trap games, so to speak, but I do think Rock Thomas and that Jacksonville State offense will be able to avoid sleepwalking in this one and get the win. Colgate visits Richmond, and there isn't enough great things you can say about the Raiders' performance last week versus Yale. The Raiders' run defense completely shut down the Bulldogs' attack as they held them to 12 yards on the ground. Offensively, their passing game was on fire. Quarterback Jake Melville threw 5 touchdown passes, and they only did that type of production versus Richmond. Now, when Colgate is at their best is when their passing game can come out and complement what they do on the ground. Defensively, Kyle Diener, Brett Field, Pat Afriye, and Trent Williams gives the Raiders a strong presence within their front seven. The Spiders are coming off an embarrassing loss to Stony Brook where they could not get their ground game rolling, which made them very one-dimensional. We know Richmond's offense is a quick strike attack, but ball security was also a big reason why that didn't happen last week. Versus Colgate, obviously they can't afford any turnovers against a team that's able to chew up the TOP, and second, defensively, how they utilize their secondary versus the run will be key. Richmond can match up on the outside with their corner, so dedicating an additional guy in run support could be the difference in getting Colgate out of their tendencies. Now, Richmond has to get much better on both sides inside the red zone, and that's where the Raiders thrive. I think they go on the road and knock off the Spiders because of that. A big battle in the Big South as Charleston Southern and Monmouth meet up. The Bucks are coming off a bye week and heading to the Jersey Shore with their spread option attack at full tilt. The biggest key to victory for the Bucks in this game will have to come on the defensive side of the ball. How well can their defensive line led by Anthony Ellis affect the running game of Monmouth? That'll be the biggest question that they'll have to answer. We know their offense will have some success, but can their defense get stops and steal away a few possessions? Now, for the Hawks in this game, it'll be about sustaining drives, and in my opinion, that falls on the shoulders of their passing game. If Monmouth can come out early, throwing on first down and having some success there, then I like their chances. Defensively, strong safety Mike Basile will play a huge role, and he'll be the alley defender versus the option and has to do his part to not allow the Bucks to get the edge. This one will be a well-defense game by both squads. I like Charleston Southern in this one. Option football is a monster to prepare for, and coming off a bye, that added rest will prove to be the difference. North Carolina Central and Norfolk State open up their MEAC schedule this week, and I really like the balance that the Eagles possess. Quarterback Malcolm Bell does a great job of getting multiple receivers involved in the passing game, and North Carolina Central's offensive line is one of the best in the MEAC, so it's no surprise that they are able to run the football and have some success. Defensively, their 4-2-5 will be put to the test as Norfolk State's quarterback Greg Hankerson is a dual-threat guy that puts a ton of strain on your defense's ability to keep contained. The Spartans were so good versus the run last year, and now that they're without Deion King patrolling the second level, they've had some struggles. So it'll be important offensively for them to remain consistent all 4 quarters. Their offense tends to fall flat after halftime. These two teams, I think, seem to match up very well as the last 2 meetings have been extremely close. I think the Eagles are just better in the trenches on both sides of the ball and will be able to control the line of scrimmage and win the game. Columbia travels down I-95 to Washington, D.C. to take on the Georgetown Hoyas. Now, I'll be doing a color commentary for this game, so I won't predict the winner, but I will say this game will come down to third down defense as both teams stepped up big time in their last game. Columbia in a 13-9 loss to St. Francis, and Georgetown in a 20-17 victory 2 weeks ago against Marist. It should be a good one, and you can watch this game live on the Patriot League Network. It's called the Duel in the DMV when Howard and Morgan State meet up in Baltimore this weekend, and the biggest duel will take place in the trenches. Can the Bison match up against the Bears' offensive line? That'll be one of the intriguing storylines to watch out for. The other will be quarterback play. Who can avoid the big mistake? Both quarterbacks in this game, Kalen Johnson of Howard and Chris Andrews of Morgan State, are talented passers that have to play a clean game in order for their squad to win. Luckily, I will be providing the color commentary for this game as well, so I won't pick a winner, and you can catch this one live on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app.
I love football. I cannot get enough of football. I watch it on every level.
The emotional release. You know, whether it's an exciting play that gets you all jacked up and juiced, or whether it's the fact that you're able to pour everything you have. Whatever frustration you had that week, you can put into that first kickoff coverage, that first block that you have, whatever it might be.
And I couldn't think of anything better to do to fill that void that you have as a football player than to get into coaching.
You get a chance to release a lot of emotion that you otherwise have no place to release. There's nothing else like that.
Again, the relationships you build and the people you're around and watching the guys compete, not just on the football field, but in life after they get done playing. It's just an amazing game.
Although I'm an offensive guy, I love to see great defensive play, and I must admit both Princeton and Sacred Heart catch my attention by the style in which they play. So let's go inside the film room to break down the Tigers and Pioneers defenses to see why they are so successful.
First is communication. Look how these guys effectively pass guys off to their safeties while not getting out of position, which ultimately kept them in position to limit this play to a minimal gain. Too often we see teams blow assignments because of lack of communication and end up giving a huge play. Second, it's the effort. I always like to preach to receivers, lay out for passes. So when you see a defensive back do it, all I can do is smile. That's the guy I want on my football team. You give me a guy with effort like that, I'd win a lot of football games. And when you're giving maximum effort like this, you get rewarded, and he was rewarded on that play with an interception. Third is the aggressiveness that I like. Both teams, especially in the secondary, showed the necessary aggressiveness needed to be successful, especially versus the run. Guys that have that my ball mentality or take gaining yards personally always do a great job defensively, and they have 11 of those guys on their squads. Fourth, both are fundamentally sound. They're rarely out of position, and the guy who is supposed to make the play always makes the play. As an offensive guy, you can't move the ball or will have a hard time doing so versus teams like Princeton and Sacred Heart because of how fundamentally sound they are. Fifth is the want-to factor. The want-to has to be there. You see here in this example, the defensive back gets cut blocked, but he wanted to make that tackle. He wanted to get a stop for his football team. That's exactly what want-to looks like. And finally, it's about attitude. Defense is about reacting, and arriving in a bad mood. So just to finish off my point, I like what I'm seeing defensively from Sacred Heart and Princeton. Both teams are putting the NEC and Ivy League on the map with their defensive play. Don't forget to check out and grab your copy of our two newly released books, Football: A Love Story and What Did Football Teach Me? These books feature over 100 stories from current and former coaches, players, executives, and entertainers from across the football landscape, describing what got them involved in the game, what they love about it, and what life lessons the game taught them. You can find your copy or order your copy from our website at footballgameplan.com/books.
Well, I think the FCS is really, when you look at it, it's the perfect model for football. Okay, in that as a coach, number one, you deal with Division I, it's great. You deal with a high level of athlete. In our case, you deal with a high level of student. It's extremely competitive football. It's a great environment, but it's also doesn't have some of the trappings that the bigger levels have as far as the business and the money of things. But you know, it's pure football. And as a coach, that's what I like is you know, it's about the football. And you know, I think the way we determine our champion is the best playoff system in all of sports. And I think that you can never argue with who the national champion is at the FCS level. And it's just top to bottom the most competitive bracket of playoff playoff sports there is in any of the sports. So, you know, if you like the action, I think the quality of play is extremely high. I think the quality of person is extremely high. I think there's some great coaches at our level, and it's attainable to fans too. It's also, you know, you come to an FCS game, you have a little bit more of a close experience to the players. You know, and in our case, the players meet the people in the town. It's right there. They're not kind of like these pros in waiting. You know, you can reach out, you can touch them, you can meet the coaches, you can do that stuff. It's just enjoyable football at a real high level still.
New York City, the media capital of the world. But in America, there is a world of media at our fingertips, from coast to coast. The broadcast media industry connects us in so many ways and remains on the cutting edge of providing us news and entertainment. Have you ever pictured yourself working in the media? Did you ever dream of working in TV or on the radio? Make your dreams come true today. Connecticut School of Broadcasting is the oldest and largest group of communication schools in the country. At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, you'll learn by doing with hands-on training straight from professional broadcasters. There is job placement assistance for graduates, day and evening courses available. Graduate and get into the job market in only 8 or 16 weeks. Don't waste another second daydreaming about what you want to do with your life. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO and start living your dream today.
Traveling down south, there are 8 big-time matchups to keep an eye on this weekend. Let's start in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where the surprising East Tennessee State Bucks travel to take on the Wofford Terriers.
Head coach Carl Torbush has done an outstanding job with his East Tennessee State Bucks this season. They've won in multiple ways as well. Close games, games where they needed 30-plus points, and even an overtime matchup. They're a well-balanced offense that doesn't beat themselves, and they do a great job of both sustaining drives and also getting off the field defensively. In this matchup, it'll be the first taste of the triple option, as the Wofford Terriers are one of the best in the nation in doing so. Fullback Lorenzo Long and running back Will Gay are legit game breakers, but it will be the Terriers' defense that has been the story of the season so far. Wofford is very stout versus the run and has shown the ability to play effective coverage. Look for the Terriers to take away Jawan Stinson and make East Tennessee State one-dimensional. The Bucks, while game, won't be able to slow down the Terriers' option. I like Wofford to win this one. Big early season matchup in the Pioneer League between Campbell and Butler, and the Bulldogs defense seems to have hit their stride, posting back-to-back impressive performances. This game will provide yet another test for their run defense, as the Campbell's 1-2 punch of quarterback Elijah Burris and running back Deshaun Jones are tough to deal with. The key for Butler in this game is to get running back Devontae Lane going early. Their ability to set up the play-action passing game for Malcolm Weaver is critical for their offensive success. The Camels had trouble last week versus Presbyterian, especially versus the run, and I know their defensive line was a big-time question mark heading into the season, but I like what I've seen so far from this group. Defensive end Sid Holt looks to be a tremendous playmaker for Campbell, and I think he'll be the one to camp out in the backfield all game long. I like the Camels to win. This will be a statement game in this league for Campbell. Look for wide receiver Aaron Blockman to come up huge here as the Camels move on to 3-1. Texas Southern takes on Alabama State, and when you look at this matchup, there's a lot of intriguing storylines here. The Tigers quarterback Avarian Hurts has played some really good ball this season, and I've been very impressed with how he's seeing the field and delivering the ball decisively and accurately down the field. One of the other storylines is that this will be the second game post Derek Griffin, who's no longer on the squad. He's a tremendous player and will no longer be playing football at Texas Southern. And if last week is of any indication, they'll be just fine on the perimeter. The other storyline is that the Alabama State defense, which was supposed to be a strength, has been the biggest weakness so far. Now, granted, their offense has put them in bad situations all season long, but you would expect the Hornets defense to be able to force field goals instead of giving up big plays and touchdowns inside the red zone. This week, they finally get a home game after 3 consecutive road contests. Their best bet this week is feeding tailback Khalid Thomas and trying to shrink this ball game. I don't think they can do it this week. I like the progress Coach Haywood has made at Texas Southern. You see a young team building confidence, and that bodes well for them the rest of the way. Staying in the SWAC, we have another East versus West battle as Alcorn travels to Grambling, and the Braves have to be kicking themselves for the way they gave the game away last week to Arkansas Pine Bluff in triple overtime. Alcorn State couldn't put the ball game away in the final minutes of regulation. Their biggest issue remains on the defensive side of the ball. Right now, the Braves are giving up over 285 yards a game via the pass with no interceptions. That's not what you want to hear when you're facing Grambling State, that offense with quarterback Devontae Kincaid playing lights out. The Tigers' aerial attack was on full display last week versus Jackson State, and one is left to imagine what could have been if Kincaid was healthy the entire game versus the Arizona Wildcats. In this matchup, the Tigers' defense will have to play excellent versus the run. Alcorn does a great job in getting movement up front offensively and is a versatile offensive attack. I think despite last week's defensive output, the Braves will look a lot better on that side of the ball. It won't be enough, as I think Grambling jumps out on Alcorn early and is able to hold them off late. I like the Tigers. Why not? Here's another SWAC game of intrigue. Southern versus Alabama A&M. The Jaguars coming to this game fresh off a rout of Alabama State 64-6. And where they hurt you is on the perimeter. Wide receiver kick returner Willie Quinn is one of the most explosive talents in college football. When defenses overcompensate to stop him, the Jaguars' bell cow Leonard Tillery is the model of consistency. He's able to eat in the running game. I've been very impressed with the play of the Jaguars' defensive line. That was one of the questions I had coming into the season. Alabama A&M couldn't quite pull off the upset over Prairie View A&M last week. Their biggest issue is along the defensive line. The Bulldogs have to be able to frustrate Austin Howard in the pocket and reset the line of scrimmage versus Leonard Tillery. If they can't do that, then their defensive struggles will continue to go into this week. I like how they can control the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of football, and their ground game does pose a threat to Southern. I just can't see a one-dimensional approach beating the Jaguars. I like Southern to go into Huntsville, Alabama and grab a win. Down in the Southland Conference, Abilene Christian travels to Homer Bryce Stadium to take on the Stephen F. Austin Lumberjacks, and this one has the potential to be a shootout. The Wildcats have been so close the last 2 weeks, both close losses to Northern Colorado and Houston Baptist, so it has to be frustrating not being able to close out games. Their offense can definitely put up points, but collectively, both sides of the ball has to avoid early deficits. Abilene Christian has to start the game at the same time Stephen F. Austin does, or they'll find themselves in familiar territory. The Lumberjacks upset McNeese State last week, and they are very similar to the Wildcats in the sense that their passing game spreads you out and forces you to defend every blade of grass. What the Jacks have going for them this year is a very stingy run defense that only has given up 99 yards a game on the ground. Now, granted, the cynic will say, well, they're giving up nearly 430 yards passing. While true, the numbers always lie, as the Jacks are much better than their stats indicate on defense. The difference in this game will be turnovers, and right now I can trust quarterback Dallas Sealy not putting the offense in harm's way. I think they do get off to an early start and will be able to get their first victory of the season. I like the Wildcats. Over in the MEAC, there's a battle of winless teams as South Carolina State and FAMU kick off this weekend in Tallahassee. For the Bulldogs in this game, it's about getting back to what we've known South Carolina State to be during the whole Buddy Pugh era: physical ground game and attacking style defense. This is a team that lost 2 NFL draft picks and undrafted free agents, so they are in the middle of a rebuilding project here, as is Florida A&M, who is coming off a tough loss to Tuskegee. The Rattlers' offense looked like they found some balance last week, but couldn't finish the drill late when it mattered the most. Now, I think we'll see both offenses start to find their sea legs, so to speak, in this one. It'll come down to the defensive side of the ball, and South Carolina State, led by Darius Leonard, in my opinion, will have what it takes to keep the Rattlers winless. Remaining in the state of Florida, Stetson plays host to cross-state rival Jacksonville, and for the Dolphins in this game, running back Ulysses Bryant has to get rolling early. We've seen the Dolphins get off to a slow start offensively, which cost them versus Liberty and got them into early trouble last week versus Edward Waters. Versus Stetson, it'll be how they stop the run, which could determine whether or not they'll get the win. The Hatters come into this game looking like a well-rounded team, and we've seen balance on offense and an even better defensive effort with safety Donald Payne leading the way. Now, what has happened poorly for the Hatters is that they've come out flat in the second half. Obviously, something has to give here, as you have a team that starts slow going up against a team that can't finish. I think Stetson wins this game. I think this will be a steady progress. This has been a steady progress, for head coach Roger Hughes, and I think this may be his best team yet. They'll get the W over the perennial Pioneer League Titan, Jacksonville. Battle number 2 for the Sergeant York Trophy takes place this weekend as Tennessee Tech travels to UT Martin, and you have to love the Golden Eagles' offensive attack. They utilize the short passing game as their run game and then attack you vertically down the field to open up their official ground game. First-year head coach Marcus Satterfield is building something good here at Tennessee Tech, and where they will be tested in this contest is on the perimeter. UT Martin does a great job versus the pass, partly due to the fact that they can apply pressure with defensive end Damani Taylor, and also because their 3-3-5 defense does a great job in taking away passing windows. Also, the Skyhawks on the flanks love to play above the rim. Their big-bodied wideouts can play the inside intermediate game or the down the sideline vertical attack. It is all about what they plan to do in this matchup. I like what quarterback Troy Cook has done so far this season, but expect both passing games to have their bouts of inconsistency, but the Skyhawks will be able to prevail because of their ability to control the line of scrimmage and run the ball with Jamie Bowe. I like UT Martin. Huge battle in the SoCon as Samford plays Chattanooga. The Bulldogs passing game has the potential to give the Mocs some problems. Quarterback Devin Hodges has thrown 8 touchdown passes to only 1 interception this season, completing 73% of his passes. The Bulldogs have 3 big-time playmakers on the flanks in TD Marshall, Kelvin McKnight, and Emmanuel Obajimi. Now, Chattanooga has the best defense, in my opinion, in the FCS, only giving up 14 points total on the season, all of which came last week versus Furman. While their defense, rightfully so, gets the headlines, their offense has been just as impressive. Quarterback Alejandro Benefield is steamrolling towards numerous postseason honors. The junior quarterback has completed 75% of his passes and 9 touchdowns. Again, this game will be won on the perimeter. Can that Mocs secondary slow down the trio of wideouts for Samford? Chattanooga has the added benefit of a defensive line that has 10 sacks on the season, with 2 bookends in Keonta Davis and Vantrell McMillan leading the way. I can't see the Bulldogs' offensive line keeping those guys out of Hodges' face all game long. Look for the front end to help out the back end as the Mocs will move on to 4-0.
I think FCS presents such a great opportunity, you know, at a school like Fordham and the rest of the Patriot League schools to get the best of both worlds. You're talking about, you know, some of the top 60 academic institutions in the country. Combine that with, you know, full scholarship Division I football that's able to compete on a national level. I think, you know, from a recruiting standpoint and talking to other coaches, that's what we're identifying. We're identifying guys that academics and football are equally important. Not one more than the other, but truly equally important. I think that's the strength of FCS football, certainly in the Patriot League.
As always, while we're rolling on through the college football season, we are always keeping a watchful eye on the next crop of NFL draft talent coming down the pike. And here's a look at 9 prospects and their matchups that you want to keep an eye on this upcoming weekend.
Starting in the Bronx with Kevin Anderson out of Fordham, 6'2", 195. What I'm going to be looking for in this ball game when he takes on the Penn Quakers is how well he can make those anticipatory throws down the middle, down the seam, those tight window throws when the safety is squeezing on top of that receiver or tight end, and the linebacker is drifting underneath and carrying that route. So if he can complete those passes, that's something that I want to check the box off when I watch him take on Pitt, because we know he's a tremendous athlete. We know he can also throw well on the run. Keep an eye on Deshaun Jones this week versus Butler. Tremendous talent. He's going to have a very good test against that Bulldogs defense at 6 feet 215. Jones is the leading rusher and a guy that can do a great job in catching the football out of the backfield. So you want to see all of those skills on display in a big key game, a big conference game versus Butler. Chad Williams out of Grambling at 6'2", 193 is a big-time playmaker. He's the #1 option for this Tigers passing offense. And when you look at him play, when you watched him against Arizona, he stepped up big-time versus top competition. So you want to see a little bit more polish in this game as we move forward, and it starts this week versus Alcorn State. In the game I'm going to be broadcasting this week, Georgetown versus Columbia, keep an eye on #4, Matt Buckman, the tight end H-back. You're going to see him moved all around that formation for Georgetown. He can be utilized as a runner, as a receiver, good inline blocker as well, and his athleticism will be on display and definitely will pique the interest of a lot of scouts at the next level. Anton Warby out of Wofford, the right tackle in that triple option offense, has tremendous footwork and athleticism. He's a guy that I think that can kick down inside and can excel as a guard. He's on that Senior Bowl watch list. Keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on his footwork, and also keep an eye on how he's able to climb to the second level with ease. The NFL loves pass rushers, guys that could bring it off the edge. And Javancy Jones out of Jackson State at 6'2", 230. He's going to play defensive end for Jackson State, but he's a guy that you can see easily transitioning to an outside linebacker. He had 29 TFLs as a junior, and this year as a senior, he's already wrecking havoc against opposing offenses. So watch his athleticism, watch his burst off the edge, and watch how disruptive he is also versus the run. I'm a big fan of Austin Calitro's game out of Villanova, the linebacker at 6 feet, 245 pounds. Also has some experience playing defensive end for the Wildcats, but this is a guy that has tremendous athleticism. He's the leader of that defense, gets everyone lined up properly, and also does a great job on both ends of defense, so versus the run and also dropping back in pass coverage. It seems like every year we get a defensive back prospect coming out of that Samford program, and this year we have Jamerson Blunt, 6 feet, 185, a guy that's the free safety, but I also believe can kick down inside the slot and cover wide receivers one-on-one. So keep an eye on this matchup because it's a great one as he's facing a very good passing game in Chattanooga. So keep an eye on how often they move him around or whether they keep him back deep, but he's going to be moved around as well, and that's why I like his versatility. And finally, Willie Quinn out of Southern, 5'5", 158. Don't let the size fool you. He is a dynamic playmaker as a receiver and definitely as a kick returner. In this ball game, he should have at least one or two big kickoff or punt returns versus Alabama A&M, but keep an eye on his receiving skills. If you look at a guy like Jakeem Grant, who now plays for the Miami Dolphins, as a comp, that's a great comp because you look at Quinn and people will undersell his receiving ability, but he is also the big-time receiver on this offense, so he will have an impact as a receiver, but definitely as a returner, and one you should definitely keep an eye on this week.
New York City is the largest market for broadcast media. It's the epicenter for the TV and radio industry. If you ever had a dream of working in the thrilling broadcast world, then make it a reality by going to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. CSB has helped numerous people get a job with hands-on training and a learn-by-doing mentality. You will learn all of the high-tech equipment in the TV and radio studios. From hosting your own radio show, to being a news or sports anchor, operating a camera in the TV studio, or editing audio and video, the choice is yours. Graduates from CSB have gone on to work at some of the major companies in the industry. To get more information, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out at GoCSB.com. Your road to success starts here at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
And welcome back to Football Game Plan's FCS Kickoff, presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and we are in the home stretch of our game previews as we travel out west to take a look at some of the remaining games on the schedule. And there's a good one down in sunny San Diego as the Toreros play host to the Dayton Flyers in a pivotal Pioneer League matchup.
This is always a pivotal matchup in the Pioneer League because both teams are usually in the hunt for the title. Dayton comes in after giving the Duquesne Dukes a scare. The Flyers are able to spread the field, forcing you to consistently make plays in space defensively. The task this week will be how well can they take away the Toreros' number one option in tight end Ross Dwelly. Dwelly is your quintessential new age tight end that can be moved all around a formation, and the Toreros defense kept giving up the big play last week versus Cal Poly's option attack, and that ultimately doomed them. In this game, they have to make Dayton one-dimensional. That's been the Flyers' biggest issue this year, is that they are not getting those chunk plays on the ground this season, and it has hurt them, and it hurt them last week versus the Dukes. I like San Diego in this ball game. Cornerback Devin Bryant is a lockdown corner and will take away the Flyers' best or at least one option in the passing game, which will allow them to effectively play coverage everywhere else. So look for the Torero's defensive line to get constant pressure on quarterback Alex Jeske. After a couple of close losses, the North Dakota Fighting Hawks finally gathered a close victory last week in their Potato Bowl rivalry versus South Dakota. This week they traveled to Bozeman, Montana to take on the Montana State Bobcats, and the Fighting Hawks are literally 3 plays away from being undefeated. Where you want to see them get significantly better is inside the red zone. They have to start paying off these good drives with touchdowns. Field goals are good, but they can get you beat eventually. In this game, the matchup for them lies within their ability to protect quarterback Keaton Studsford from that Bobcats pass rush. Now, Montana State will probably get their starting tailback Chad Noel back for this game, which makes an already potent offense more dangerous. The Bobcats defense will be charged with the task of making this a Keaton Studsford versus Tyler Brugman ball game. Outside of the Western Oregon matchup, their defense has had some issues in stopping the run. They'll see a lot of John Santiago in this ballgame. I think we're in store for a good defensive battle. Ultimately, look for the Fighting Hawks to make a few more plays offensively to secure the victory. Portland State opens up their Big Sky season against Southern Utah. The difference between this year's Vikings squad and last season has been a turnover differential. Interceptions and fumbles are up, which is why they're sitting at 1-2. This is still a very good football team. They just can't beat themselves and constantly fight uphill battles throughout the course of a ball game. This week, and what looks to be the question throughout the remainder of the season, will be their run defense. If they can keep Southern Utah in second and long, third and long situations, then it plays right into the strength of this Vikings defense, which in my opinion is their secondary. The Thunderbirds have to be pleased with the play of quarterback Patrick Tyler, who's been efficient and hasn't turned the ball over. Their well-balanced approach is what got them the victory over Southeastern Louisiana. However, they will have to push the envelope a little bit this week to start generating chunk plays, and defensively, can they match up on the perimeter on both ends? Portland State loves to get off tackle and threaten you with a quick passing game. I think Portland State hits the ground running both figuratively and literally in this ball game. I like the Vikings. In our first Styles Make Fights reference, we have the Montana Grizzlies taking on the Cal Poly Mustangs. It's the air raid versus the option attack. Now, coming into this season, I thought the Grizzlies' biggest question would be their defense with all the losses, but they've proven to be a significant strength to this squad, especially versus the run. Montana has given up, on average, only 2.9 yards a carry. Now, obviously, that number will increase as they are facing this week an option attack, but that's still a pretty good number because it tells you that the Grizz are doing a great job of resetting the line of scrimmage. Offensively, we know about their passing game with Brady Gustafson, but they will have to slow down the pace just a bit in this one to force Cal Poly to maximize their own possessions. For the Mustangs in this ballgame, they are often impressive 2-1 start and are fresh off an upset victory over 9th-ranked South Dakota State. What's been the difference is the precision of their passing game with quarterback Daniel Graves. They don't throw it often, but they are connecting when they do. Defensively, will they be able to generate enough pressure to get Gustafson off the spot? Their secondary will be put to the test this week, and I think they'll be up to the task, but I do like the Grizzlies in this one. 2 weeks to prepare for the option may not be enough to stop it, but it will be enough to slow it down to steal a few possessions away. I like Montana. Illinois State and Indiana State meet up in a crucial Missouri Valley Conference tilt. The Redbirds' defense is a very active one, especially versus the run. Matt Swain and Dalton Keene have done an excellent job from a pressure standpoint, and what they'll need is their offense to avoid early game slumps and miscues. It's not like Illinois State doesn't have perimeter weapons and are a very good offensive line. It's the little things that have to matter for this football team. Now, for the Sycamores, their offense is just as talented as Illinois State. Indiana State does a great job of imposing their will in the running game. It forces a defense to have to consistently get off blocks and make tackles in space. Can their defense match that level of physicality that their offense imposes on people? Right now, that's the biggest question. They have a huge task this week facing a Redbirds rushing attack that averages nearly 5 yards a carry. To me, that'll be the biggest X factor in this ball game. I like Illinois State. I think their defense will be able to win the battle up front and accept the challenge that Indiana State poses with their offensive line. And finally, we take a look at another Big Sky battle as Eastern Washington travels to Flagstaff to face the Northern Arizona Lumberjacks. And hopefully the Eagles can pack a defense with them this time. This is a team that is notoriously known for dropping 40 points on every game, on an opponent in every game, but what I can't get used to is seeing them also give up 40 points a game. There's some really talented players on this defense as well. Defensive end Samson Ebukam, Dylan Ledbetter, and Zach Bruce, just to name a few. In this game, it'll be the secondary that's charged with the task of making plays as they're facing Case Cookus, who hasn't thrown an interception all season in that Lumberjack passing game. If they can't get the Cookus, then they'll struggle. Northern Arizona finally got in the win column last week, and it's because they found offensive balance. This week versus Eastern Washington, they should be able to find that balance, which should help them be much more effective in the red zone. Can Cookus also work in a third option in the passing game? I think he can, which will just open up their entire offensive attack. I see Northern Arizona winning this one in another high-scoring Big Sky affair.
So that's it for this week's episode of the FCS Kickoff presented by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts. And if you missed any one of our episodes, you can find it archived on the website, footballgameplan.com/FCS Kickoff. Be sure to check out our FCS Opening Drive podcast as well, in which you can find on iTunes or any archived episodes on our website at footballgameplan.com/podcast. And again, check out the FCS Conference Whip Around. We're going to go from coast to coast, previewing the upcoming week's schedule in the FCS conferences.